Well, hello. Welcome, everybody. Sorry about that. We are in Prestwick, Scotland, in the Manfred Jan C47. It's leg 5 of the Blue Spruce Route. And we're a little early. Normally our takeoff time is 0200 Zulu, but a little bit early today. Just for some family reasons. We've got a little bit of a window here, so we're going to go ahead and get underway. Very excited about today's leg. There's a lot of cool things to share with you. Let's see, I think we're close to being ready to go here. We do have some ATC today, which is something new for our past 4 legs. Since we've done them in kind of a late hour for where we were flying, we just haven't had a lot of ATC, so that'll be something else that we'll have to contend with here as well. Let's see if I've got that on. Oh, yep, it's on. Okay. Alright, we are already at the active, and it looks like, hey, oh boy, we got somebody trying to taxi out, maybe, I don't know. Not sure what's going on here, so we're going to go ahead and get airborne. A little bit of a right crosswind. On departure, we're going to turn left crosswind, and be on our way. Okay, well, one curveball right away here is our visibility, and we are filed VFR. So we may have to change our altitude a little bit here because, as you can see, our ceiling is going to be a little bit lower than 3,500, which is what we had hoped to be able to fly. So we'll use this autopilot a whole lot, but I do think one thing we'll do right away is we'll stop our climb here. Actually, might even have to go back down to 1,500. So the first thing we're doing today, by the way, just a quick introduction to what this is all about. If you haven't been a part of any of our other streams or haven't caught any of our videos, we are flying an historic North Atlantic route called the Blue Spruce Route, and it started in Oxford, Connecticut, over in the United States. We flew up to Goose Bay, Canada, and into Narsarsuaq, Greenland, then over to Reykjavik, Iceland, and then 2 Saturdays ago we flew from Iceland into Prestwick, which is in Scotland here, and we're kind of following the same path that a group of historic aviators flew back in the World War II era when they were trying to get aircraft from North America over to Europe. There's another, well, I shouldn't say one, there's several groups that are actually duplicating this in real life, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later on. But one of the cool things about today's route is that we actually have a little bit more options in terms of our navigation. The last 3 routes have all been oceanic routes, and they've been pretty straightforward, just VFR direct, and just try to keep it out of the ocean type of deal. And the only real action that we've had has been when we're either taking off and climbing out or coming in for a landing. But today we're going to have a little bit more to choose from. Right now we're flying toward an NDB, and it's the first time that we've been able to get this instrument to come alive, which is pretty cool. This is actually the New Galloway NDB, and that's about 25 miles or so from Prestwick. There's some terrain here we can't get too low. We're going to be scraping the treetops here until this fog layer burns off. But we'll have some VORs actually that we found that are working. That's been a little bit of a thorn in our side. Woohoo, boy. We are low. Not as low as you probably could hope to go. Not legal by any stretch of the imagination, but that's alright. We're having some fun. But anyway, so we've got some NDBs, we've got a VOR or 2 that we actually found that are functional, which is awesome, because that's been something I thought was actually not simulated in this aircraft outside of the United States. We hadn't found any up until this point. Nothing that I'd flown across in Canada worked, nothing in Greenland, nothing in Iceland, and then nothing in the northern part of Scotland. So to find a few of these that are actually working is pretty exciting. We are also using a drift calculator from E6BX, and that thing's working pretty slick. Starting to get a little bit better feel for how that works, and the more I use it, the better we end up. But right now we're not using that at all. We're just simply heading towards that NDB for 25 miles or so. Alright, a little bit afraid of the terrain, so I was going to show you the drift calculator that I'm using, but I want to make sure that I'm clear of all these little hilltops here. We should be okay at 2,000, but I always like to just make sure, like little ridge lines like this worry me. Don't want to have an accident 5 minutes into the stream here. Okay, I think we're good for a little bit. Let me show you what we're using here for drift calculations. As soon as we get by this NDB, we're going to have to put it into effect. So here is, whoops, that's active sky. So this is the E6BX online drift calculator, e6bx.com. I've included a link for this in an earlier stream, but pretty simple. We want to, after the NDB, we want to fly a course of 155. We'll take a reading on our wind and get our, well, actually that's the airspeed of the aircraft, and right now we're about 145. Our wind direction where we're flying is about actually just updated 238 at 15. So you can see we need a correction angle of 6 degrees, and so we actually need to be heading 161, and our ground speed will be about 142. So all those things help us out as we're trying to stay on course. So just ahead of that, we're going to go ahead and set that. We will take another reading. Actually, we're getting pretty close, I think, to the NDB, because it's really starting to deviate. So it'll probably flip around. This NDB is not a part of an airfield or anything like that, so there's no, there's no big time visual indicator that we're crossing over it. It's just some of them are just out. Yep, and you can see it's rotating. So we're past it now. So we're 163 heading, which is where we're going anyway, and then we are going to calculate here. This will be one of the few times we actually have to just old school drift, navigate, and calculate. But we need, this is a 71 nautical mile leg, and so for us, if we're traveling at 145, let's do the old distance equals rate times time, and we need about 0.48 hours, which is 29 minutes. And so I have a timer on my flight yoke. You can't see this, but I've just set that to reset, and we'll go for 29 minutes, and that will take us, we're now heading to the Barrow NDB. And now unfortunately Barrow 385, that's not simulated or not active. I don't know which one, but some of these NDBs are good and some don't do anything. For the most part, they don't have much of a range anyway. I mean, NDBs, I think some of them get out 40-50 miles, I think. I did include a link to the active NDBs that are still working in the United Kingdom. There's not many. I think they're kind of being phased out, actually, and that's too bad, because well, not too bad. I mean, they're a lot of work. So I understand that modern avionics are much easier and more reliable to follow and all that good stuff, but it's still kind of cool to simulate it. So the idea, of course, with doing drift calculations is you have to do them fairly often, and so I have a little note to myself that we're going to recalculate our heading every 5 minutes, and that's coming up here in just a couple of minutes. As soon as we're through with these first couple legs, then the VORs work, and then we can talk a little bit more about kind of some other things that are associated with this particular project. It's been a fun one. It's hard to believe we have this flight today, and then we have one last flight on June the 5th, and yeah, we're there. We're across the English Channel, celebrating the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, and of course the important role that the C-47s played in that invasion, that operation. One thing that we may run into today, I'm not positive, but there are a few stations online. The route that we've picked here is, I'll show you that in just a little bit. It's a little bit of a ziggy-zaggy kind of route. Part of the reason why it's that way is because we were looking for, you know, a VFR flight path that stayed away from the class Bravo and Charlie airspaces. And the other reason why it's a bit of a zigzag is because we were trying to navigate toward, you know, VORs and NDBs that were working, that were active, and so it's not going to look like your typical route. And I know with VFR you have a lot of flexibility, and that's kind of what it's made for. But yeah, this is probably not what you'd be planning, even if you were. Might have lost you there for just a minute. I had vPilot disconnect and my OBS stopped. But in case I did, here's what we changed. We changed the wind direction and the wind speed. That adjusted our airspeed. Actually, it's probably more like 140 right now. So that means we need to be heading now 165, and we will make that adjustment in our autopilot here as well. Okay, things are starting to clear up. We may climb in just a bit, try to get up a little bit higher. We do have a visual kind of reference for the next waypoint. Let's take a peek, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we took off here, Prestwick. That we hit our first DME, excuse me, our first NDB was New Galloway. Now we're heading down here at about that 162 to Barrow Walney, and that actually is an airfield, and so we're looking for, when we get to kind of this little point, we should see that airfield, and once we see that airfield, we'll know it's time to turn a little further south. We're going to head to Wallasey, and the cool thing about Wallasey is it has a VOR that works, so we can track direct the VOR. That'll be awesome. Then we're heading again even further straight west to Westpool. When we get to Westpool, which doesn't have a VOR or an NDB that works, but we can track the outbound. Then we're going to start our turn toward Duxford, and we will have this is the Shoblin. Actually, I take that back. Welshpool may work after all. But anyway, we'll head to Dublin, then start heading east to Birmingham, which we'll have to get some ATC clearance to get in there. That was we couldn't find anything down here. It would have been nice. I could have maybe snuck right through this little airspace, but we're gonna probably have to check in there. And then from Birmingham, we fly down to Barkway, and on our way to Barkway, we'll see Duxford just off our left. It's about 7 miles. But generally we pick it up. If not, we'll get all the way to Barkway and we'll turn north, kind of northeast, about a 023 heading, and we'll be able to figure out our traffic pattern, figure out what our weather's like there in Duxford, and meanwhile, here we are into the soup. Some rain showers, some obvious fog, overcast. It says at 1,000. Looking at the weather map, it looks like this is going to last for just a little while. This will be a real test, first of all, of our just our navigating skills, but also, you know, test of the plane itself. We're going to go ahead, turn the pitot heat and de-icers on. We did have a crash on one of my practice flights. I had one heading into Reykjavik actually, and just lost lift. Didn't lose engine power, didn't lose anything else, just flat out lost lift. And so I think you know, it was probably a simulation of the you know, the icing effect. We're gonna have to descend, ladies and gents. I thought we might get a little tiny clear patch here, but we're gonna have to head down to 1,000. This was good timing because we're actually out over the open water here for a little bit, so we should be okay to descend. 10 minutes now. We're going to take another reading of our wind information. We're going to put it into the drift calculator. I am seeing 258 at 25, and we right now we've sped up because we're descending a little bit, so our true airspeed is, we'll call it 155, so we need a heading of 164. Thankfully we don't have to do this very much today. We did attempt to do this on an oceanic leg, and I think I did okay. I ended up probably about 50 miles away from the airfield, which by modern standards that's not very good, but what I've learned in speaking with some guys that know more than me, on those oceanic legs, you're sometimes happy if you're within 100 miles of where you want it to be. So, you know, we'll take it. But it just was tedious. It was, you know, I didn't do it every 5 minutes. I did it every 15 minutes. But doing that every 15 minutes for 4 hours, that got kind of old in a hurry. Okay, we're down below the layer. There's kind of the tip of the land, so we should have an airfield right out there. I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of our heading. Just take a second, maybe pop outside and see what it looks like. Just kind of gray, hazy, typical English spring day, I guess. I don't know. I've never been there, but seems like that's kind of the stereotype. Don't think I'm going to be able to climb up, at least for now, up to 3,500. But I do think we're right about the time that we get down to our next waypoint. By the time we get down to that Barrow Walney airfield, I think we'll be kind of punching through the moisture layer at least, and maybe then things will clear up a little bit. The terrain is going to be a factor if this is as low as, you know, the clouds let us fly, or as high as the clouds let us fly. As you saw coming out of Prestwick, you know, we were running into some hills that were pretty darn close to where we were, and it's the same as we head down the coast and then start to turn inland to Duxford. You know, you can see right here we have a little bit of a cliff. We might need to, in fact, I'm gonna climb up just a little bit here. I'm gonna try 1,500. At least we're kind of a legal VFR altitude at that. We are heading generally east today, even though right now we're heading you know, south. Speaking of heading south, I'll have one more wind correction to make here before I do that. Wind is now 259 and 26. Our airspeed about 135. So our heading 166. Alright. Let me get set up for the VOR that we are going to be able to track here in just a second. Wallasey 114.1. Excited about that. That makes life a lot easier. There she is. Yep, there's a VOR coming alive, and we'll be needing a 176. That's the we're going to try to track here. 176 outbound. It's going to be right about there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So we're a little right of course right now, but again, that's not too bad. We're kind of looking out here. We should have, we're 16 minutes in. We thought it was going to be about 29 minutes. So here in the next 13 minutes or so, we should start seeing this airfield, the Barrow Walney Island airfield. No, I didn't get the True Earth scenery, even though there's a great orbit sale going on right now, 50% off of everything. Mainly because I wanted to get a few other things instead, a few other scenery pieces. But the other reason is I think that the scenery that is showing right now looks pretty good, actually. I mean, all I have is the kind of the global base layers and things like that, but it looks pretty good. Notice that our NDB is actually coming alive here as well. I think that might be, what would that be pointing to? Well, 385. It's so the Barrow. You know, I haven't seen that yet. That's kind of cool. I've done this flight probably 5 times and I haven't noticed that. The first couple times we tried a little different route, but if that guy's coming alive, I'm going to just use it here. We need right about a 1.5, looks like about a 1.53. It's a little different from what our drift indicator, our drift calculator was telling us, but a DME, why do I keep saying DME? An NDB is going to be more accurate than dead reckoning and using a drift calculation. So, you know, you're gonna lean on what's a little bit more accurate, and in this case, if we've got it, we're going to use it. We've got 2 hours. We want to make sure that we're staying on track the entire time. It's obviously more populated now than it was in 1940s, but I can't help but think about anyone who lived in this area at that time and how much of a morale boost it would be to see and hear these aircraft, these Allied aircraft, flying overhead, heading to the front lines. You know, I mean, the buildup that took place prior to D-Day was unreal. I mean, unprecedented. And you know, a lot of the planes that participated came right straight through this route, right straight through this country. So that had to feel, that had to lift the spirits of the townsfolk. I would think anyway. To see all that firepower heading to fight against Germany, to fight against the Axis. Okay, well, we've got ourselves up 1,500. That's still pretty iffy. We definitely aren't, you know, we're not, I don't know, you're supposed to be half a mile below. There's all kind, I don't know what the VFR rules are in Scotland, I'll be honest. I'm still just kind of wrapping my head around what they are in the United States, but I'm certain we probably are not legal right now, but it's the best we can do. And it adds a little something, you know, those guys flying the route back in the 40s, you know, they would have been okay with this. You know, they would have been making the best of what they had, because they, you know, they had to stay on schedule. They had to get from where they were coming from down to the airfield wherever they were gonna launch from, and they had to be there on a certain day. They had to be there to take off on the 6th of June. So we're tracking that NDB into Barrowalney Island Airport. Not sure when Scotland becomes England here, but to our right, if you could see out that far, you'd see the Isle of Man. If that helps you kind of get a feel for where we're at geographically. I'm calculating about another, just a little over 5 minutes until we hit the airfield, and then our job will be to track the VOR a little further south to Wallasey. It's the Woodvale Airport now as well. And there's a little bit of terrain. I don't know that we would clear that hill if we were heading that way. I think we're going to be maybe wise to just turn a bit here, climb a bit. I think we're okay. I think we're clearing things, but yeah, that's pretty. Oh man. Yeah, we're right there, guys. Yeah, there's a more accurate look at it. Probably closer than we're supposed to be. But yeah, let's have a little fun while we're doing this. Alright, back towards the NDB. Back down to 1,500 so we can see. Probably make out a visual here pretty soon. Looks like we have a little bit of a scenery glitch going on. If that doesn't cover up the airfield. It might. The airfield, I think, should be out here, but I don't know that it's rendering. Yeah, we're a little early yet. We might be across. There's a little bit of a gap here. Might be on the other side of that. Don't see anything down there. It's a good sized little airfield too. It's not one that's going to be, you know, where you're tucked away into a little hillside or something. It's not some grass strip in a farmer's field. Oh, there we go. I see. So hey, yeah, we did pretty well on that 71 nautical mile leg. There it is. Yep, and sure enough, our NDB is saying, hey, we need to head a little bit to the right. We won't worry too much about that because we're going to pick up the VOR here in just a second. But all right, not bad, not bad. I think this is one of the airfields that comes with the UK 2000 VFR Ultimate Pack. I did pick that up a while ago, and it's like $40, but you get 82 small airfields. I mean, it's a great way to just pick up a bunch of scenery. And yeah, we've messed around quite a bit. I've only been able to fly to probably about half of those. Okay, well, we are turning now. To Wallasey VOR, and 176 was our intended outbound radio, so inbound radio, excuse me. to need that for our next leg, so I'm going to go ahead and enter that frequency into our secondary navigation and just kind of have that ready to go as well. 176, spin it around. Apologies. Not sure where that disconnected, but here's where we just were at the Barrowalney Island Airport. We're now tracking this path here to the Wallasey VOR. Once we get to Wallasey, we've got a 46 nautical mile journey down here to Westpool, Welsh Pool, I'll say that right. And so we'll track the outbound radial to get ourselves down where we need to go. And so far so good, except for the connection issues. So who knows what this is going to make the stream look like, I don't know. We'll see.